So a lot of places, what they will do is put in a code of conduct to make sure that the boats are limiting the amount of disturbance we cause. When I first got here last year, we had a lot of these problems. So I put in place a code of conduct at our resort, which we're hoping to just highlight as general guidelines, hopefully throughout the Maldives. This is our little diagram. So we've got our little dolphins in the middle. The two biggest principles is we do not approach directly in front and come at them from behind. This is going to lead to them moving out of the way. It's going to cause a change in their swimming behavior. It's like if you're walking down the streets here and there's a car driving towards you. I'm pretty sure none of you are stupid enough to let the car walk into the car. You're not silly enough to do that. You're going to move out of the way. So if a boat is coming straight towards the dolphins, again, they're not going to swim straight into the boat. They're going to move out of the way, or they're going to dive out of the way. And same again, if you've got a car coming at you from behind, following you from behind, you're going to move out of the way so you don't get hit by it. There's a very sort of innate feeling that we get, all animals get, when you're being followed behind. The feeling of being chased. It's very uncomfortable. It makes you move out of the way or maybe run away. This innate feeling. So again, they will have that. For our dolphins, what we have is this 150-meter caution zone. And then 50 meters around the dolphins, in which we don't want to encroach. 50 meters at sea is much closer than 50 meters at land. They look completely different on land and at sea. There is still plenty close enough for everybody to get lots of fantastic photos. We're just giving them a little bit of space, making sure we're not driving on top of them and trying not to disturb them if they're resting or something. For our whales, it needs to be at least 100 meters. They're much bigger, so they need a bit more space. Ideally, we should have no more than 3 boats within the 150 meters, 300 meters of whales, and spending around 30 minutes. The boat shouldn't really spend more than 30 minutes with the animals. This idea of not approaching from behind or head-on, what you want with your group of dolphins is to converge onto their route so that you are traveling side by side. Dolphins are, they found this in quite a few places. They can predict the boat's behavior if you're not driving on top of them. If you're giving them a little bit of space, traveling side by side, then they can predict how fast you're going, which way you're going, and then they can move around you. And they're quite happy to do that. If you're driving around all over the place, they don't want to get hit. Of course, they're going to move away. Come along side by side, traveling one speed, one direction, they can move around us. And a lot of the time, especially the spinners, they will come to the boat to bow ride because it's fun for them. Basically, as the boat goes through the water, it makes the water faster to swim through. So it's sort of like surfing for them. It's a fun activity for them. But we need to give them the choice to come to do that. If they're still sleeping or they're in the middle of hunting, we need to give them a little bit of space to let them get the sleep they need or to get the food that they need. And then the other couple of points, we don't want to be changing speed or direction rapidly around the dolphins. Again, if we're chopping and changing all over the place, it's going to cause an escape response. They are going to swim away because they think we're crazy drivers and they don't want to get hit. Being predictable, slow, steady movements so they can plan their movements around us, and reducing our speed to less than 6 knots when we're within 150 meters. A couple of reasons for this. One, the faster you're going, you're just more likely to hit something. Same if you ever go running or you start cycling, the faster you go, the more likely you are to hit something. On our island, we have a lot of low-hanging trees. If I cycle faster, I usually end up hitting the trees. Also, for some of our speedboats, for example, and jet skis, which create very high frequency sounds. So remember, high frequency doesn't travel very far. So it can be a very short amount of distance before the dolphins can actually hear you coming. And at that point, it might be too late for them to figure out where you are, and bang, they get hit by the boat. We don't want to park our boat directly in the way that they are trying to travel, because again, they're not going to swim into the boat, they're going to move away. And that feeling of being chased, so not chasing them at high speed from behind. We don't want to be encircling the dolphins, driving around them in a circle, trying to trap them. They need to have a little escape route. Otherwise, that's going to create a lot of stress for them. If they feel trapped, they're going to be very, very stressed. Really important we don't separate those mothers and calves. Remember, the poor calves will be open to attack. And we don't try to feed, touch, or swim with dolphins. Feeding, they're not going to like the food. They've got plenty of food to go catch for themselves, nice fresh fish and fresh squid. Touching, if they don't like it, they can turn around and maybe bite back. And also, it's ideal not to swim with them. Again, it's very disturbing for them to have people chasing after them in the water. Particularly with the spinners, they will travel too fast. You wouldn't be able to keep up. And as they're traveling out of the atoll at sunset into the deep water, you really don't want people swimming outside of the atoll in deep water when it's starting to get dark, because that's when the predators are coming out as well. So not the safest time for them to get in the water. The other thing with our bottlenose, which can be quite common feeding along house reefs and things, they are very big. They can be aggressive. You will sometimes get groups of males fighting each other, and you don't want to get in the middle of that. They are big, chunky animals. In the UK, they actually attack and kill harbour porpoises. Harbour porpoise is about 1.5 meters. And what they do is they can ram into the side, crack their ribs, bite, and throw them in the air. Just toss them in the air. About 70% of the harbour porpoises that wash up in the UK, dead on the beaches, are bottlenose dolphin kills. They get this in California as well. There's quite a few theories behind why they're doing that. One of them is coming back to this idea of killing calves. They're practicing infanticide, because a calf will also be about the same size. So they can be very aggressive. There are also a few cases of bottlenose saving people's lives, but you don't know how ours are going to react. And if you've got mothers and calves in the water, again, mum's just going to protect her calf. So it's best not to swim with them, stay out of the water, and take plenty of photos from outside. So a couple of concluding remarks. All of the whales and dolphins in the Maldives are protected under law, protected since May 1993. The Maldives is actually part of the International Whaling Commission's Indian Ocean Sanctuary, so they do have a lot of protection here. And these sorts of codes of conduct are implemented worldwide. A lot of countries worldwide have these codes of conduct, and they are put in place by local people, local boat operators, supported by government, and they are usually adhered to out of a voluntary code to make sure that we're not scaring away the dolphins. Because if you scare them away, then you haven't got any dolphins to go and see on your dolphin watching trip. So if you want to maintain the industry, maintain the income from the industry, you got to keep the dolphins around. So these codes of conduct help encourage sustainable tourism, make sure that we are limiting the disturbance, the impacts that we are having on them. It enhances the guest experience. When I first got here, we would have a few guests say, "Are we going to hit the dolphins?" as you head straight towards them. And you don't need to be a biologist or have any sort of background in marine mammals to sort of be aware of that. So when the dolphins are also calmer, when they're not trying to run away from the boat, if they stick around, the guests are going to spend more time with the dolphins as well. So it enhances their experience, which then, of course, is, again, good for the boat operators, good for the people running the trips, because the guests are happier. And if the dolphins stick around, you can continue running the trips for years and years and years to come. References, photos, and so thank you very much for listening.